Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing one of the best regarded vintage re-editions of recent years, launched in 1,959 pieces for the 2019 model year. This is the Breitling Navitimer Reference 806 1959 Re-Edition, and it stays very, very close to the historical prototype. So the watch is designed to represent the Navitimer calculator chronograph as it appeared in its Reference 806 edition circa 1959, and there were a lot of little changes over the years that characterized the 806 during its long life. So what we have here is true to history in size and detail, 40.9 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel. It measures 13.5 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip, 48.6 millimeters. However, the spacing between the lugs of 22 millimeters does mark this as a modern timepiece. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and you can see it wears nicely, comfortably. The watch is broad for a watch of its era. It was a large timepiece in its day, and it remains full-sized, not oversized, but full-sized by today's standards. Because of the exceptionally broad lug-to-lug spacing for a vintage-inspired watch, I'm going to recommend this watch for a wrist no smaller than 15 centimeters circumference, but you can see it is reasonably low, and it will fit underneath many cuffs. The strap is calfskin, black on the top, fairly seamless. You can see it has a contrasting binding that matches the ecru coloration of the Fotina. It's sheer cut on the sides, showing the layers of leather, and then it has a nice buttery calfskin on the bottom. And you can see the strap is mostly bonded together as there is no stitching. Taking a quick look at the buckle, it is simple like the watch, polished and satinated alternately, and Breitling branded. The case, featuring the Breitling B, now bereft in most of its instances of wings, as CEO Georges Kern wants you to think of sea, land, and air applications, not just air when you see Breitling watches. But the Navitimer is all about aviation as a model, and we'll get into that in a moment. The lugs are squared off, minimally beveled. The case band is thin and sheer and satinated. The lugs are particularly long in relation to the case, and this is a vintage Q that's played up. You can see that the pump-style pushers are polished, and the crown is simple. We have beads. There were large beaded and small beaded vintage 806 Navitimers. So here you're seeing the bead in proportion to its 1959 size. So that is exactly the beading in terms of size and spacing that you would have gotten in 1959, which was also before we started to get contrasting sub-registers on Navitimers. Now the scale-out board is a logarithmic scale, and it's used for calculations. So what you do is essentially employ it for multiplication and division. So let's say I want to divide 70 by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 70, and I'm going to do this like a fraction, with the number being divided over the number that is doing the dividing. So there's 70 over 2. You got to keep your decimals in mind, because it's not going to help you out there. You go to the index, and so 70 divided by 2, the index is 10. That's always where you look when you're dividing. So you can see 70 divided by 2 is 35. Now, if I want to multiply something, it works backwards. So let's say I want to multiply 4 by 2. Well, I'm going to line up 4 with the index. Remember, 10 is always the index. And now I'm going to search, find the 2 again. There's 2. And we'll just say 40 times 2 is 80. Again, you got to keep those decimals in mind. We also have some units here, including nautical miles and kilometers. You can use this to gauge your ground speed, your air speed, your drift. You can use this to gauge your rate of climb or fuel consumption. It's very useful. You can learn to use it quickly. You can even calculate the tip at a restaurant. Now, the watch has a dial that includes a number of vintage elements, including the Fotina, which I want to emphasize does not impede legibility at night. It is still quite bright in spite of the shade of luminosity used. The hands are all white lacquered, and you can see lovely syringe-style hands are used for the hours and the minutes. We have a minutes register that features slashes at 3, 6, and 9 minutes because in the middle of the 20th century, long-distance phone calls, which were pricey, were billed in 3-minute increments. So you have your chronograph minutes, you got your chronograph hours up to 12, you have your constant seconds, and you have what would, in their day, have been AOPA wings, because the Navitimer was developed in conjunction with the American Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And by the way, I want you to see this right here. As we are about to make the jump across the 60-minute mark, you can see this is an instantaneous jumping chrono. So these wings would have been the symbol of the AOPA, and initially the shield at center would have had the letters AOPA on it. Now, of course, for various reasons dealing with licensing and naming rights, this does not say AOPA on it today, but the Navitimer was sold by the AOPA through its members catalog, and whether AOPA specifically spec'd and designed the watch and Breitling built it, or AOPA simply distributed it, the bottom line is that the Navitimer and the AOPA and the symbol have always been inextricably linked. Now, the crystal is plexiglass, so it is thermoplastic, exactly what you would have seen on a vintage original, and it creates a lovely distortion, which is nostalgic. On the reverse side, you can see individual numbering. Breitling, of course, has declared this to be the caliber B09. It's basically the B01 in manual wind format, because the original watch would have been manual wind. It would have featured in its early years a Valjoux or a Venus movement. So, taking a quick look here, you can appreciate that the watch has no date, but it does have most of the other functions besides the date and the automatic winding of the B01. So we have hacking seconds, we have a crisp column wheel for cycling the functions, we have a vertical clutch for engaging the chronograph seconds hand without any jump or stagger, and if you wish, you can leave it engaged, no additional wear, tear, or hazard, as a vertical clutch does not create additional wear and tear on the watch. And also, important to note, the manual wind power reserve is 70 hours, so very nearly 3 days. The movement is also adjusted in 5 positions and is a certified Swiss COSC chronometer. So there's a lot to love there, and it beats away at 4 hertz or 8 beats per second. All of that pivoting on 39 joules. And of course, the B09 is Breitling's own in-house chronograph caliber. All of this is 30 meters water resistant, so stay high and dry up in the sky. This is not your aquatic Breitling, but you've got a super ocean for that, right? Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing.